Welcome, radiant souls, to Divine Decode, the space where ancient wisdom and everyday life dances together. I am your host, Pragya Malvia, inviting you on a journey into the codes of consciousness that shape how we live, love, and heal. Whether you're folding laundry, walking under the city lights, or sitting quietly with a cup of tea, I'm grateful you're tuning in. Tonight's episode feels like gathering around a virtual fire with Maria Camila Betancur, who is a founder and minister of the Hive Entheogenic Church. And Maria is a guide, a remembrance keeper, and a community weaver, helping us reconnect with the sacred stories that live in all of us. First of all, Maria, thank you for being here. I'm delighted to have you here, and it's lovely to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great being here.
Okay, Maria. So when I was reading about you, your journey, it inspired me, and it was fascinating. So let's begin with this. That your journey, it is so deeply woven with the sense of remembering where we come from, right? Where our origin is. And I think many of us, we reach a point where maybe after a loss or a sudden change or sudden transformation, we start thinking that what are my deeper roots? What am I here for? So, can you share what first drew you into the worlds of family constellations and finding about your origin? And yes, can you enlighten us with that?
Yeah, so when I speak of remembering, I don't just mean going back to our roots, meaning where we were born, whether it's the city, the country, the state. I speak of going back to the purity in which we once were before we were conditioned otherwise. And so that what that means is when we are first born, we are coming from source, right? And then we're born into our parents, and our parents have a set of conditions that they have given to us. And the more we try to fit into the mold that they give us, the less connected we are to God. And then as we expand our circle to not just our parents, but society, the environment in which we grow up, that continues to be more and more the case. The more we accommodate, the more we adapt to our environment and the people, the less connected we are to the source, to where we came from. And so this happens with our parents, with school, with the system, the government, the healthcare system. All of these things are kind of putting us in the box of society. And so as we begin the journey of remembrance, we're stepping back beyond the conditioning, beyond what we were told we're supposed to be and how to be, beyond the pain and the suffering that we've received and have had throughout our life, into remembering the oneness that we are. Now, the way that family constellations comes into play with this, family constellations invites us to remember our roots. So the first part is remembering who we are, family at the core as a divine being. Family constellations invites us to go to our roots and recognize our family lineage, our system, which we have a tree of. And on the right side, I have my father, and on the left side, I have my mother, and behind them, I have my grandparents and my great great grandparents, and so on and so forth. And so it is said that Bert Hellinger said that whatever our parents don't finish, we will continue. So family constellations helps us uncover family dynamics and loyalties, whether visible or invisible loyalties to our family, that have us essentially in a loop, repeating the same patterns that our ancestors did.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And that is so, so beautiful, right? I mean, knowing what our lineage is and what our purpose may be, um, depending on what we, take out from that lineage and what we interpret from what they've left for us or what they're doing for us and what part they lead us to. And thank you for sharing that with us. Mm, you speak so beautifully about initiations. Okay. So, as I've heard and as I've read, so you just say it, you do not say it as ceremonial milestones or something which is, very beautifully bedazzled or something like that. But you speak it as, life events. And in my own life, I've noticed that transitions, whether um, it's academic or it's personal, they actually are the seeds of your transformation. And you talk about that very beautifully. You talk about initiations very beautifully. And I'm curious, what do modern initiations look like in today's world? Because a lot of people just have misconceptions about it. Can you clarify that for us?
Yeah. So in today's world, what's happening right now for a lot of us is we're going back to the ancient ways. We are building a bridge of the modern world, but the ancient world. And while those that are still holding the wisdom in these ways are wanting to come into the modern world. For example, the Indigenous, they would love to put on shoes and walk around with shoes. Meanwhile, we have had the ability to have the shoes, to have the accommodations. So now we want to go back and walk barefoot, right? And so what's happening right now, it's kind of a bridge that's happening. We're going back and they're going forward. And so modern day initiations are not very present, right? We can talk about the beginning of a girl becoming a woman. We don't really have initiations that support that, right? We have our body that menstruates, we get our blood or moon, and that is an initiation that it's not really talked about. Our body does it, but it's actually shamed, right? So, uh, for me at least, and for a lot of women, once we get our period or moon, it's shameful, it's dirty, we don't connect to it, we don't talk about it, where our body is naturally giving us an initiation and saying, you have now transformed from a girl to a woman. So back in the day, we did have these initiations and rites of passage where a woman would, a little girl would, they would spend 4 days, depending on the tradition and the lineage. For example, the Kumkak, they spend 4 days honoring the little girl and doing different things for her. And then on the final day, she comes out of the kind of cave where they've had her in for the 4 days. And she comes out to be celebrated, to be a woman. And they cut a piece of her hair to signify that she goes into the ocean. She comes out of the ocean. They cut a piece of her hair to signify that transition into womanhood. And so, what the other side of that, for example, for men is, at least for us women, even though the traditions have been lost for some of us, our blood, our body still does it for us. For men, they don't have that. They don't have the time of the month where they know, oh my gosh, I am now a woman, I am bleeding and I've transitioned, right? And then we get it every month. So for men, it has become a lot harder to recognize that transition for boy to man. And so nowadays, what we have is a uh, again, bringing back the old ways, the sweat lodges, the sun dances, going hunting are ways in which boys became men. The father would take them hunting, and during that hunt, they would have their first kill and harvest, and from there they would transition to from child to man and have a set of responsibilities. Um, so those would be the more apparent initiations and rites of passages. However, I see initiations and rites of passages, even in that would be the macrocosm, but in the microcosm, we have those in certain parts of our life as we transition archetypically, for example, from maiden to mother, from mother to crone. We have these transitions based on our age, and based on where we are in our cycle of life. But also, um, in the ancient ways, in the traditions that I walk with, I have gone through many initiations and rites of passages that are, again, the ancient ways, that include dieting with plants, that include something called vision quests, where you are in a vision quest, you are crying for a vision. That's why it's called hamblecha. And you are out in the mountain or the woods by yourself for 4 days with no food, no water, and you are praying for this vision, praying for clarity. The only thing that you have around you is your prayer ties that are in a circle, and you're inside that those prayer ties, and staying there for 4 days with no food, no water. And so those are um, initiations that have been traditionally around, and we are remembering it and bringing it back.
So true, so true. And thank you for sharing the fresh take with us, because a lot of time we just, link initiations with traditional ways and traditional methods. And thank you for bringing so many issues and social stratas on page with us today. Um, it's actually a comforting view to know that there are still ways through which we can, just answer our own questions through these initiations, and also, look at society this way, and, have our own perspectives. You weave ancient indigenous wisdom, as you also mentioned earlier about the indigenous wisdom and their strata. You link it with the world of today, and a world which is buzzing with screens all around every time, with sunsets which are happening in traffics. What is your way of honoring traditions that are centuries old, or, um, those are just laid back out there from the earlier times? And how do you help people who grew up in a very different reality find a resonance with those values and those systems?
I would say that I do it by leading by example. And so here at the Hive, we have monthly sweat lodges where we invite everybody, any person that feels called to join in that prayer, to come and remember the old ways, which is through sweat, for example. It's a very strong prayer, and it has all of the elements included: the fire, the water. We're essentially the earth, the air. We're essentially going back to the womb of Mother Earth, and inside we are praying. And so we offer that here, as well as different entheogens and ceremonies that support people that they are wanting to remember. And so um, that is how we're able to support, um, by by being that space, that place of safe refuge when a person is ready and desiring to go deeper into themselves. We're not here to give you the answers. We're here to hold a safe space with these traditions so that you can remember. And we also like to, once a year, bring back people, whether it's to the Amazon or the Comcac tribe or Mexico, to different places, where these original prayers and traditions are. And in this way, we can continue to pass on the word by mouth of the traditions, the experience, the memory, and people here in the Western world can be more, have more information, more educated on what they did not know exists and has existed for a really long time.
So true, so true. And that is a great initiative. And thank you for that again. I love that. Also, you mentioned a community, right? When a community it comes through, there are so many checkpoints that we take wherein we do not heal ourselves in solitude sometimes, but it is a community that is required for us. And you mentioned community matters over here. So, why do you believe that community matters so much right now in this present times? And do you think that there are certain things that only a community or a community talking or interacting with a community or people around would heal rather than healing something in solitude? So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're primal beings and tribal beings. And so in the old ways, we were in a tribe where everybody had a task and a responsibility. We had the firekeeper, the person that went out to hunt, the women that took care of the children, the women that weaved their clothes, the women that cooked. And so it was a joint effort to be able to support the family, the tribe. And so when a person would be exiled from that tribe, it would mean death because they did not have the resources available to be able to survive because there wasn't one person does everything. The tasks and the responsibilities were spread. And so it is very important because it is in our blood, it is in our nature to belong, to be part of a community, to not do it at all alone, to have the ability to not do it all and have somebody else take something on and somebody else take the other thing. And then I give this and you give that, and we support each other in this way. Um, Today we have, the banking, the money system is what rules everything. So now it's much easier to say, well, I don't know how to sew. Well, I'm just going to buy my clothes from someone. I don't know how to make my own food, so I'm just going to go to the grocery store and buy it. But somewhere there's somebody behind that dollar, behind that screen where you made that purchase, that's sewing that clothes, that's growing that food, that is part of this community and this thread. So when we think that we're alone, we actually aren't. We are just so desensitized and so disconnected from the extension of people that are supporting us to be alone and have our life, right? If we look at right now, I am in a screen with you. I have clothes on. I didn't make the screen. I didn't make the clothes. Somebody did. I paid them, right? Because financially is how this uh, world in today's day moves. But nonetheless, it took more than me to be able to do that. So we are by nature meant to be in community and collaborate and help each other.
So true, so true. And rightly mentioned that we are so desensitized at this point that we fail to understand that sooner or later we'll just have to be around each other, and directly or indirectly we do not see direct intervention of humans around each other more nowadays. As you also mentioned that we're sitting on screens, we're talking about something, and we just fail to understand that it is um, the very nature of humanness that we are all social beings, and it's all that community has given us, and we have to give it back to the community as well. And yeah.
And it's also important to note that when we are in community, we are less likely to be controlled and manipulated because it is not a one person decision, but coming into a meeting and discussion of what is in the highest good for the tribe. And so, in this way, we're less likely to be manipulated, coerced, conditioned. But when we are alone, we're more likely to have that.
So true. Yeah. Also, I to add on to that, what I feel that community actually gives us that perception. It takes us through that whole story of how a particular topic can be viewed in different perceptions, and then we come out of that prejudice that we've already formed and we keep on forming. So yes, so true, so true. For listeners who feel a yearning right now to connect to their roots, to find or to reclaim the spiritual lineage of theirs, what are some gentle first steps that you would like to share with them that they need to begin with? And how can one begin without the fear of doing it wrong or staying respectful to lineages? So, anything that you would like to share with them today?
I think the most important thing when desiring to explore different traditions and lineages is going with an open mind and with a desire to help, not take. A lot of people go to different indigenous tribes with the desire to extract their wisdom versus support them and continuing to hold this wisdom. So when we do that, we're less threatening to them and more in support of them, and by doing that, they feel more open and receptive to being able to share that wisdom with you. As far as accessing your own roots, your own tradition, my invitation is to begin to ask questions, perhaps to family members. Get curious about your family and where they came from. Um, and when we ask these questions, it's important to stay open to what the answers are without judging them. Because when we're finding out the information in the field, is not to judge our family for the mistakes or the choices that they made, but just to have the information to acknowledge it so that we can choose different if it needs to be chosen different. And whatever is good, I keep with me, and whatever is not so good, I leave with them.
True, true, so true. And that is so refreshing, Maria. Thank you. Thank you for sharing because it's reassuring, and I'm believing that our listeners, they take up those insights and they actually work upon it. Maria, thank you for sharing your light and your wisdom with us today. You're a living reminder that, remembrance, it isn't just a solitary quest, it's a collective, it's a community thing. And I've taken a lot from you today. Also, to everybody tuning in, whether you're gathering with your family, you're noticing a sign, or just tending your own heart, honor that impulse and just honor it to reconnect. Reconnect with people around you, connect with other social strata that is around you, and ask questions. That is all that you can do to yourself. And every moment it holds a doorway to somewhere. This is Pragya Malvia wishing you courage on your path. Until next time, keep decoding the divine within and take gentle care of yourself, your ancestors, and each other.